An $85 million Russian Sukhoi Su-35 cuts through the cold northern sky, its powerful Irbis-E radar sweeping the sea below. Ahead, a massive radar return appears on the screen. A British aircraft carrier. From the cockpit, it looks exposed, almost alone. What the 5 Russian pilots don't realise is that someone else has already been watching them for minutes. But before we continue, there's one thing worth asking. Why did those Su-35 fighters change course toward the carrier in the first place? Because when a $4 billion warship enters a contested region, every military nearby wants to know exactly what it's doing. The encounter actually began hundreds of kilometers away. Along Russia's northern coastline, long-range surveillance radars were already scanning the sea, massive rotating antenna arrays. Cold wind sweeping across the installations, operators sitting inside dimly lit monitoring rooms. Then one radar operator notices something unusual. A large surface return, too large to be a cargo vessel, too fast to be a fishing fleet. Analysts quickly examine the radar signature. The size, the speed, the radar cross-section. Within minutes, the conclusion becomes obvious. A British aircraft carrier strike group is moving through the region. Ships of that size are impossible to hide. A 65,000-ton carrier like HMS Queen Elizabeth creates one of the largest radar signatures on the ocean, a floating airbase worth roughly $4 billion. Whenever a carrier appears near contested waters, nearby air forces almost always respond. Not to attack, but to observe, identify, and remind the other side they're being watched. At a nearby Russian airbase, 5 fighters are already on alert. Su-35 Flanker E aircraft. Twin-engine air superiority fighters worth roughly $85 million each. Equipped with thrust vectoring engines, long-range Irbis-E radar capable of detecting targets hundreds of kilometers away. Within minutes of the alert, the aircraft roar down the runway. Afterburners ignite, blue flames cutting through the morning haze. The fighters climb rapidly into the thin northern air. Their mission is simple: fly out over the sea, confirm the carrier's identity, observe its activity, and return with information. Routine. Professional. Something Russian and NATO pilots have done countless times. Normally, a carrier group appears on radar like a constellation. A large central contact. The carrier itself. Around it, smaller signals. Destroyers, frigates, support ships, all moving together in tight formation. This layered formation protects the carrier from threats, missiles, submarines, aircraft. But as the Su-35 formation moves farther over the sea, something looks strange. The radar picture doesn't match expectations. Distance to contact, 220 kilometers. The pilots scan their displays. One large signal. Bright. Clear. Consistent with a massive ship. But around it, almost nothing. No cluster of escort ships. No obvious defensive ring, just open water. Inside the lead Su-35 cockpit, the pilot narrows the radar beam. He scans wider, then narrower again. Still nothing. A carrier operating alone makes no sense. Yet the radar picture remains unchanged. From the Russian pilot's perspective, the carrier appears exposed, possibly separated from its escorts, maybe operating temporarily without protection. But inside the British carrier's operations room, the situation looks very different. Dark lighting, rows of glowing screens, radar operators calmly monitoring the airspace. They detected the Russian aircraft long before the Su-35s ever saw the carrier. Modern naval radars can scan hundreds of kilometers into the sky. Every aircraft, every altitude, every vector. On their displays, the Russian formation is obvious. 5 fighters, high altitude, approaching steadily from the north. The reason the carrier appears alone is because its real protection isn't on the water. It's already in the air. Several hundred kilometers away, 2 aircraft are flying a routine combat air patrol. Royal Navy F-35B Lightning II fighters, each worth roughly $100 million. Stealth aircraft designed to operate from aircraft carriers. Their job is simple: Control the airspace long before any threat reaches the fleet. Using secure Link 16 data networks, the carrier shares radar information with them continuously. The British pilots already know everything: the number of Russian aircraft, their altitude, their speed, their heading. Back in the Su-35 cockpits, the pilots continue their approach. Distance to the carrier, 160 kilometers. They maintain formation. 5 aircraft spaced several kilometers apart. Radar beams sweeping across the sea. Still no escorts visible. Still no aircraft detected. To them, the carrier looks strangely vulnerable, far beyond their radar horizon. The 2 F-35s adjust course, calmly, deliberately. They don't accelerate aggressively. They don't climb sharply. They simply move into the correct intercept geometry. Because stealth fighters don't rely on being seen, they rely on seeing first. Their sensors quietly track the incoming Russian formation. Every movement, every altitude change, every radar pulse. Distance between both formations, 120 kilometers. Inside one Su-35 cockpit, something appears on the radar. A faint signal, barely visible. The pilot adjusts the radar gain. The contact disappears, then reappears, stronger this time. He tightens the scan. Within seconds, the radar resolves the signal. An aircraft, high altitude, approaching from the west. Then another signal appears beside it. 2 contacts now, both moving fast. Inside the Russian formation, pilots begin exchanging short radio messages. 2 unknown aircraft approaching. High altitude, high speed. The lead pilot analyzes the geometry. They didn't launch from the carrier. They were already airborne, long before the Su-35s arrived, which means something important. The carrier group had seen them coming. Distance between aircraft, 90 kilometers. Now both sides are fully aware of each other. The British fighters maintain altitude advantage. Higher, faster, positioned between the Russian aircraft and the carrier. Inside the F-35 cockpit, the pilot sees the entire Russian formation on his helmet display. 5 aircraft, spread out, approaching confidently, but tactically exposed. At 70 kilometers, the geometry becomes obvious. The Su-35s are no longer approaching an undefended carrier. They are approaching a defensive barrier already waiting for them. The British fighters don't need to threaten. They don't need to maneuver aggressively. Their presence alone changes the situation. Because the mission of the Russian pilots was observation, not escalation. Inside the lead Su-35 cockpit, the pilot studies the radar again. 2 aircraft directly between them and the carrier. Altitude advantage. Intercept vector. Perfect positioning. The realization is immediate. They were never approaching an exposed ship. They were approaching a layered defense system that had already seen them from hundreds of kilometers away. The Russian fighters level their course, maintaining distance, observing, professional, controlled. The British fighters mirror their movement, holding position, ensuring the carrier group remains protected. No missiles fired, no aggressive maneuvers, just 2 modern air forces demonstrating exactly how far their awareness extends. Aircraft carriers are often described as floating cities, but their real power isn't just the ships themselves, it's the network around them. Radars, data links, airborne patrols, layers of detection stretching hundreds of kilometers into the sky. By the time an aircraft thinks it has found the carrier has usually been watching it for a long time. Modern warfare isn't about the moment 2 forces meet. It's about who understands the battlefield first, and who quietly positions themselves before the other side even realizes it. But what do you think? If those Su-35 pilots had continued closer, would the encounter still have stayed peaceful?